Let us pray. Our Father, keep us mindful of the special and unique opportunity we have to work for our constituents and our province. And in that work, give us strength and wisdom. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions.
The member for Calgary Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the petition... Mr. Speaker, I move that the petitions for private bills that I presented to the Assembly yesterday be deemed to have now been read and received.
Does the Assembly concur in the motion by the honourable member for Calgary Foothills that the petitions for private bills be deemed to have been read and received? Opposed? So ordered.
Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions.
Casper Place.
Speaker, I wish to give verbal notice of Standing Order 48 to move at the end of question period. This House is aware of the importance of National Wildlife Week this week, April 8th to 14th, and the battle to preserve our natural habitat, and that the House hereby lend its support to the Endangered Spaces campaign of the World Wildlife Fund and the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society.
Here.
I have copies for all honorable members.
Perhaps the first copy could come to the chair. Thank you very much.
Introduction of bills. Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs, followed by the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased today to table the Achieving a Balance report of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Residential Tenancies along with its executive summary.
Minister of Health. Order, please. Order. Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to table with the Assembly the annual report of the College of Physical Therapists of Alberta for the years ended February 28, 87 and February 29, 1988. I'm also tabling the annual report of the Alberta Registered Dietitians Association for the year ended April 30, 1989, and copies will be distributed to all members.
Thank you.
Introduction of special guests.
Minister of Economic Development and Trade, followed by the member for Stony Plain.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure, sir, to introduce to you and through you to members of the Legislative Assembly a group of students from the Strathcona Christian Academy in the constituency of Sherwood Park. They are joined by their teacher, Mr. D. Zook, and the bus driver, Lorraine Anderson. They're seated in the members gallery, and I would ask if they would rise and receive the warm welcome of this Legislative Assembly.
Stony Plain.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you and through you to members of the legislature 35 exchange students from Germany. They are visiting Woodhaven Junior High School. They are accompanied today by their teachers Anna Louise Aaron, Harold Priest, Detlef Newman, and the parent Woody Murray. I'd ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of this assembly.
Actually, Deputy Premier, followed by Minister of Municipal Affairs, then Edmonton Whitemud.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you, through you to members of this Assembly, a 4-member delegation of college administrators from Thailand. They're accompanied by Mr. Bill Nibs from Medicine Hat College. This delegation is visiting various colleges and schools in Alberta. They are seated in your gallery. I would ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of this Assembly.
Municipal Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure this afternoon to introduce delegates from Saskatchewan and Manitoba that are attending the Rural Development or Community Development Ministers' meetings here that we've held this morning and last evening. I'd like to first of all introduce those from Manitoba. led by the Honorable Jack Penner, the Minister, and Jerry Forrest, Deputy Minister, along with Executive Assistant Scott Ransom. From the province of Saskatchewan, the Honorable Neil Hardy, Minister of Rural Development, and Bill Reeder, Deputy Minister, and Glenys Perkins, Ministerial Assistant, Dennis Webster, ADM of Rural Development, and Keith Schneider, ADM Urban Affairs. We welcome them to our province, and certainly I've been very encouraged by the support and the cooperation that we have had between the provinces. British Columbia had to leave to attend to other responsibilities, but we have committed ourselves to cooperating for full Western
Your Honourable Minister, I'm sorry, we're not... Edmonton Whitemud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you and through you two members of the Legislative Assembly, the student leaders, members of the Student Council of Harry Ainley High School. They are headed up today by Kim Wallace, President of the Student Council, and also accompanied by Gain Olson, Student Council Advisor. I would ask that all members of this Assembly, upon their rising in the members gallery, acknowledge these individuals who were kind enough to give me 12 minutes or 2 hours of their time.
Edmonton Millwoods.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce to you and the members of the House this afternoon some 46 students from Mayokamum School in the constituency of Edmonton Millwoods. They're accompanied today by their teachers, Wanda Green, Maureen von Tigerstrom, and Vlada Schenkel. I'd ask them now to rise and receive our very warm welcome.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I see that we finally do have the committee report. It's been a long time coming, Mr. Speaker, because we had mentioned before to this minister we do have a crisis. Now, let me say, first of all, in the report, Mr. Speaker, there are some very good recommendations. It suggests, frankly, a number of changes that tenants have been asking for years. Mr. Speaker, I think it's deficient in one respect in not asking for a rent review board, but Mr. Speaker, again, there are some good recommendations. I notice in the press release the minister, however, says he needs some feedback, Mr. Speaker. I would have thought that he'd had lots of that already. But I'd say to the minister, none of these recommendations are particularly radical, Mr. Minister. Surely now all the tenants of Alberta need is the government with the political will to give them the changes that they need, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
And I want to specifically ask this minister, rather than a lot of feedback over a lot of years, will the minister assure the tenants of Alberta that changes will be made in the spring session?
Mr. Speaker, with respect to the report which was released yesterday by the Committee on Residential Tenancies consisting of landlords and tenants, I would say to the Honourable Leader that I am pleased to look at changes and recommend such to my own caucus as soon as we have the response from landlord and tenants with respect to the report. The leader, if he's had a chance to look at the report, would note that there is some fundamental changes. In fact, the report suggests throwing out the entire Landlord and Tenant Act as it exists, doing away with current landlord and tenant advisory boards, establishing something called a residential tenancy committee or commission. All of those, we should at least have the response from those people it would affect so fundamentally.
Mr. Speaker, there may be some recommendations in there that do require study, but a lot of these things seem to me to be self-evident. I'd remind the minister we've been studying this for a long time. This report was set up in early 1989, Mr. Speaker, and we do have a crisis with vacancy rates in Calgary as low as 0.7%. So in view of the minister's answer, could he be a little more specific? He wouldn't talk about the spring session. When does the minister hope to come back and act on some of these recommendations? Will you give us a time frame?
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Leader has rightfully pointed to the vacancy rates that exist in Calgary and Edmonton, though I would draw his attention to the statement in the report itself that indicates that despite the fact there are low vacancy rates, even with the current round of 20 and 30% rent increases, the rental rates are still below that of 1980-81. This is from the report's executive summary. In addition, it does indicate that the long-term effect of rent control would be to reduce or stifle that development. So we have to look at those items. I would, though, commit to the honourable member and to all honourable members that as soon as we can get a response, and I'm asking for one as fast as possible from landlord and tenant groups and from the advisory boards, we would look at the very fundamental changes and the number of innovative and excellent ideas that are in this report.
Mr. Speaker, the fact that rents are less exorbitant now than were in 1980-81 is frankly irrelevant to renters that are facing some very stiff rent increases, Mr. Speaker. And my question again to the minister, he says as quickly as possible, Mr. Speaker. I think I'm asking the question that renters want to know in this province. As quickly as possible can mean different things to different ministers. Can he be more specific and tell us when he will be reacting and bringing in changes? Will it be this year? Will it be 1995 or when, Mr. Speaker?
Next election.
Mr. Speaker, the report is fundamental in terms of its change in our total system of operating that Landlord and Tenant Act, or balance of fairness between landlord and a tenant in the province. I don't know if the leader is suggesting that we should implement this without that kind of input from both, with making those changes without that consideration or not. I should make one point clear, Mr. Speaker, and that is that even with the changes suggested, there would not be, in fact, a stopping of the rent increases that the member and I are both concerned about. That has to be dealt with, as is indicated in the report, by a market circumstance in which we have enough accommodation to supply the competition necessary to keep those down. Nonetheless, the report does point to a number of areas, in fact, to a total review of our system of balance, of fairness between the landlord and tenant, and we are committed to looking at that balance and to doing what's necessary to continue a fair and honest marketplace.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
Just hope we're not asking these questions next spring, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to direct the second set of questions to the Premier, Mr. Speaker, to follow up from yesterday, Mr. Speaker, where we know that the government has decided to spend between $300,000 and $400,000 of taxpayers' money to review the proposed LPAC project, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, the Premier made an interesting statement yesterday in the House. He says, and I quote, "Let's have a balanced assessment and then let's make a balanced judgment," Mr. Speaker. That's precisely why we're raising these questions, Mr. Speaker, because we wonder about the balance. Mr. Speaker, this company, the company hired to carry out this unnecessary review, we say to you, is biased, Mr. Speaker. It has a long and profitable association with the pulp industry. As I mentioned yesterday, it recommended the Athabasca region for a LPAC-type project back in 1983. We don't believe it has credibility to cover this, Mr. Speaker. And I want to again ask the Premier, how does the Premier justify spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' dollars on an unnecessary report prepared by a biased company?
Mr. Speaker, just draw again to the attention of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition the government's position, which I announced when the report was first received. At that time I said all departments of the government that are impacted by the report of the Review Board will start a comprehensive review of its recommendations right away. In addition, an independent assessment of the scientific data will be launched. And then went on to say that the independent assessment will use recognized world experts. Now, Mr. Speaker, that's what the government is doing.
Mr. Speaker, it's hardly an independent assessment when you have the same company going back over the recommendations they made in 1983. That's precisely the point, Mr. Speaker. And I want to ask this Premier, does the Premier really believe that this company is going to report back and say that their recommendations were wrong in 1983? Why doesn't he admit that they're hired to thrash the LPAC review panel and be honest about it?
Mr. Speaker, it's remarkable that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition would now talk about the government who appointed this board thrashing that review panel. I mean, let's look at the hypocrisy of that statement. Mr. Speaker, if you just look in Hansard on June the 7th, 1989, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, this LPAC committee he's talking about has been handpicked by the government. How in the world can he say this is a fair process and expect Albertans to believe him? Or his opposition critic on July the 12th. Some of them stand to benefit financially from a favorable ruling. How can he justify that committee? Or the member for the Liberal Party. It's now absolutely clear the newly appointed LPAC Environmental Review Board is a complete disaster. Now, just with their advice, Mr. Speaker, like that, you'd think we better assess the report. Or to go on with Mr. Mitchell, the environmental impact assessment process for the pulp mill is seriously flawed. They'll be unable to report.
Hypocrisy.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government has been taking the responsible position. We appointed people, they have come down with a report, we thanked them for it, I congratulated them for it, and now we're doing assessment of it.
Well, Mr. Speaker. It's certainly nice that the Premier's learned how to read in the last little while, Mr. Speaker. But the reality is they were forced kicking and screaming into holding this review to begin with. Right. They expected to get certain answers and they didn't get them. That's why they're bringing in a biased company to try to overturn the results, Mr. Speaker. And if could the Premier at least do this? At least do one thing, Mr. Speaker, because this is behind the scenes, behind closed doors that they're going to be looking at this. Will the Premier have the Minister of Environment table the terms of references for the review so Albertans will at least know what their tax dollars are being wasted on?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I come back to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition's comments, sir, that I referred to earlier. Now, how could we be wasting money having been told by him that this committee has been handpicked by the government? Hypocrite. How in the world can he say this is a fair process and expect Albertans to believe me? Now, he said that, not me, Mr. Speaker. He said it. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are doing an assessment. You'd think he'd be thrilled that we were doing the assessment in the way he and Mr. McInnes described it. Mr. Speaker,
anything to get us off track, right?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has raised a request that I'll review with the Minister of the Environment and see whether we can provide him what he'd like.
Thank you. There is an accurate catcall across the way indeed. We have no member in this House by the name of McGuinness, nor earlier did we have a member in the House by the name of Dennis, that was called across. Leader of the Liberal Party, member for Edmonton Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, my questions are to the Honourable Premier. Today marks the final day in which the Conservative majority in Ottawa puts the final touches to GST legislation. And to use the Premier or the Prime Minister's own words, Alberta is about to be hosed but good. Now the provincial government has been long in rhetoric in this area, claiming to be a leader amongst provinces in opposing GST. But yesterday we saw the situation where this Assembly the government refused to have this Assembly pass a motion condemning the process, the debating process with regard to GST. Today I'd like to find out just how far the provincial government is prepared to go in leading opposition to this GST legislation. My first question is this: will the Premier call on the Senate to exercise its power by doing everything that it can to stop the GST legislation?
Mr. Speaker, obviously the Parliament that we have will deal with legislation before it. I might say this, Mr. Speaker, if the various Liberal governments who appointed most of the members of the Senate had ever thought like our government and the people here in Alberta, that Senate would be filled with elected people who had some credibility and could stand up to the economy.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the Premier must not have understood the question. We have the opportunity to stop this thing cold in its tracks. Will the Premier agree to ask the Senate, the Conservatives and the Liberals and the NDP in that Senate, to put the kibosh? There are none, that's right. And they'll never be appointed or elected there anyway. Will the Premier agree to ask all members of the Senate, whatever political persuasion, that they kibosh this GST that's bad for Alberta?
You're really coming on Well, Mr. Speaker, I just dealt with the matter. I might recall for all members of the House that the Honourable leader of the Liberal Party back in 1988 was one of the supporters of the GST.
That's right. Hey, hey,
That's
hey.
right. Well, it's clear that we're not going to get the leadership, and we're only going to get rhetoric from the Honourable Premier on this point. My last question is the most important, Mr. Speaker, Honourable Premier. Now wait for it. Now wait for it.
Take a picture. Take a picture, people.
Mr. Speaker, will the Premier commit his government to passing a resolution in this Assembly asking that the Senate kill the GST legislation?
Mr. Speaker, it is not the intention of the government to follow that course of action. Much better that we follow the course of action that we have, which is to rally all Canadians behind the government of Alberta, including all other provincial governments. And that way we've been able to bring the pressure to bear on the federal government.
Order, please. You get your turn later. Calgary Fish Creek.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder if I could follow up on the questions directed to the ministers earlier today by the Leader of the Opposition. And it has to do with the recent report, Landlord and Tenant Relationships report. The most common or most frequently raised objection or complaint by tenants during those committee hearings, Mr. Speaker, was the failure of landlords to maintain the properties that were being rented out. Now, the current Act, as I understand it, Mr. Speaker, places no duty whatsoever on the landlord to maintain premises during the term of tenancy. My question to the relevant minister today is, does he have a preliminary policy position with respect to this recommendation from the committee to enact this additional landlord obligation to, in fact, maintain the premises?
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to want to review the report in some detail, as I'm sure the honourable member would. With respect to that specific provision, it does put an onus on whatever government agency or organization is responsible for looking at the landlord and tenant relationships that's much greater than we currently have in the Act. It would require that there be some mechanism to ensure that that property is maintained and to judge whether or not that in fact is taking place. In the provisions of the report, at least the way I read them, the committee suggests a residential tenancies commission which would be funded by deposit interest or deposit interest on the accommodation. That would provide the staff. Mr. Speaker, I don't have a specific position regarding this and would not take one on various elements of the report since they should be taken as a group, and I was advised strongly to do that by the chairman in a discussion with him yesterday just before he released the report.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on the other side of the landlord-tenant equation, the committee agreed with the landlord who requested a reduction in the length of notice required if the tenant, in fact, is guilty of a substantial breach of the renter's agreement. Does the minister have a preliminary policy position on this proposal to strengthen the landlord's position?
Mr. Speaker, whatever we do with respect to a final decision regarding the Landlord and Tenant Act, or as the committee suggests, the new Residential Tenancy Act, it has to have a fair balance between the rights of the landlord for his property and the investment that he's put in place, and the rights of the tenant for that place where they must live and have some security for. The Act the proposal not only sets out the one the honourable member suggested, but a series of possibilities with respect to having a tenant vacate for various reasons and various time frames, and for having a landlord, for having a tenant able to secure their length of stay by requiring a reason from the landlord as well. There are a number of specifics that I'm sure the House will want to review in some detail, as I will over the next few days.
Stony Plain, followed by Calgary McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, in response to my question, the Premier stated that I had raised a very serious matter. Given that the Premier should have by now had the opportunity to look into this matter and to acquaint himself with the information that is readily available, will the Premier tell Albertans whether or not he finds the actions of the member for Redwater Andrew in this matter?
Thank you. Order, please. Order. Order, honourable member. The question is entirely out of order because the matter is being raised as a point of privilege by the member for Redwater Andrew. Edmonton Kingsway, please be quiet. Due notice has been given to the chair with respect to a point of privilege. The same notice was given to the member for Stony Plain, who is well aware of the fact that this issue will be dealt with after the question period this afternoon. The chair now recognizes Calgary McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Advanced Education insists on perpetuating the myth that the post-secondary education system in this province is adequately funded. Because his department indicated to the University of Alberta that they would not get extra per student funding if their enrollment went up, the General Faculties Council at the U of A has decided to put a ceiling on total campus enrollment for next year, resulting in 400 or 500 qualified Albertans being prevented from attending the University of Alberta. Although the minister has said there's room at the University of Lethbridge and there are many college transfer programs, our research indicates that the fact is that these institutions are full. For the minister, or to the minister, what does the minister have to say to parents today who have worked very hard to provide a college or university education for their children and who will find that there is no room for them in Alberta?
Mr. Speaker, the University of Alberta, which has some 29,000 students, is a very successful institution. And I well recognize the interest of both students and parents in Alberta wanting to attend that institution. The facts of the matter are, however, which is somewhat contrary to the honourable member's question, we have some 29 institutions in Alberta, many of which offer university training programs. And my information is there is sufficient space in the system this year for those who wish to enroll. The day of those students wishing to attend the institution of their choice and taking the program of their choice, with respect, Mr. Speaker, is rapidly changing. I have not had any official notice from the University of Alberta as to what their new policy is, and I would expect in due course the Board of Governors, which at law are the people responsible for setting admission standards, would inform me as to what their decisions are and their recommendations are.
Mr. Speaker, I find it quite alarming that the minister would say that the day of choice is over in Alberta, choice of program and choice of institution. My second question to the minister is, was the minister advocating in his comments yesterday that universities should have a fire sale of their assets to pay for operating budgets and to provide quality education?
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, I don't know quite how to take the honourable member's question with regard to fire sale.
I'm certainly not the author of any statement. I would point out that if one looks at the billion-dollar commitment of this government to the post-secondary system in terms of advanced education, and looks at the fact that if Alberta is not the top, it runs very close to the top in per capita funding, then surely institutions are going to have to look at other sources of revenue with which to maintain their institutions. I would point out that the University of Alberta is very unique. It has assets of about $1.8 billion, and it has a tremendous amount of agricultural land within the city limits of Edmonton. Whether the board chooses to utilize some of its assets by converting it to income, such as leasing their land and producing their revenue, that's a decision of the board. Mr. Speaker, my responsibility as minister is to see that Albertans who have the ability plus the desire to get a post-secondary education have that opportunity, not as a right but as a privilege, and we will do everything within our power to see that happen. So quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, the reference to having a fire sale or do anything similar to that is certainly alien to the thinking of this minister.
Grand Prairie, followed by Edmonton Highlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When it's springtime in the Rockies, we have snow melt and runoff and soil erosion throughout much of Alberta because of the slope of this land. Those of us in the north live on soil that's extremely sensitive and fragile and very easily abused. But it's even worse in the southern part of the province because of the slope, where water comes out of the mountains and goes across the province very quickly, and water management is more vital there than most places, and that's where we have the dam project on the Old Man River. And we've recently had federal people visiting us from Ottawa and that part of the province, and I was wondering if they were instrumental at all in hastening the progress of that dam, or whether they are proving to be an impediment, and I was wondering if the Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services would bring us up to date on that.
Mr. Speaker, as a result of a lot of interest with respect to the Old Man River Dam in recent weeks, there was a visitation delegation out from one member of Parliament who did visit the Old Man River Dam site in recent days, and in talking to a number of representative groups in southern Alberta, the individual in the southern part of the province of Alberta determined that they should lead a delegation to go to Ottawa. And that delegation is accompanied by petitions, submissions, resolutions on behalf of well over 300,000 individuals in this province who declared their interest and support for the continuing construction of the Old Man River Dam. That delegation is in Ottawa, was in Ottawa yesterday, is in Ottawa today, and joined that delegation there are two members of this Legislative Assembly, the member from Pinch Creek Crow's Nest and the member from Cypress Redcliffe. And they will be extending an invitation to the Federal Minister of the Environment, the Honourable Lucien Bouchard, to come and visit the most important environmental enhancement and mitigation construction project underway currently in North America.
Again to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, would you have any information on time frame for this important project and whether delays will continue?
Mr. Speaker, as we stand here today, the Old Man River Dam is on target by way of a construction schedule. It was defined for it in the early part of 1986, and it's within the budget announced by myself several years ago. The conclusion time frame for the fill of the reservoir will be the fall of 1991. And Mr. Speaker, construction is underway unabated and continuing the schedule that was outlined earlier. And hopefully all things will be in place to ensure that the people of southern Alberta will have an opportunity to have security with respect to water. Wildlife will have a place to find feed. Municipalities, towns, and villages will have a secure water supply. Industry will be in place, and the quality of life in the southern part of the province of Alberta can equate that which is provided to the citizens of Edmonton and Calgary.
Edmonton Highlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the University of Alberta has been suffering overcrowding and underfunding consistently for the last 8 years. In fact, only in election years have their grants gone up to even meet or slightly surpass inflation. And now they're looking at locking out some 400 to 500 qualified students. They've had to raise the entrance requirements year after year. That hasn't worked. They're going to raise tuitions next year. That hasn't worked. The fact of the matter is that these kids work hard and they're being shut out of university. I'd like to ask the minister, seeing as how the government has known for years that this crunch was coming, it was anticipated 7 years ago, is the minister's answer to these students that their number one priority, so-called, for education has changed, or is he going to argue that this backlog of 5 years is just a temporary problem?
Mr. Speaker, the government's priorities have not changed.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if the government's priorities haven't changed, why is it that this government's asking students to pay more and get less? Will the minister explain why it is that students are being asked to pay an extra $15 million a year in tuition fees? The institutions are being underfunded compared to the rate of inflation, and this minister says there is no access crisis. What's he going to do to solve it?
Right. Come on, John.
Mr. Speaker, I can't answer all the questions the honourable members asked, but I'll respond to one of them. Tuition fees, Mr. Speaker, tuition fees in Alberta are the second lowest in the nation. There seems to be general feeling amongst most people, including the student leaders I've met with, that quality of education is most important. And one of the ways that perhaps we should move is to encourage the students to have a vested financial interest in their own education. Mr. Speaker, the government announced on January 3 that the institutions were able to do certain things, not compelled. One of those ways was to increase their revenues by as much as $15 million via tuition fees added to the $23 million I announced, came to 5% increase, Mr. Speaker, and surely if we expect the healthcare system and other institutions to get along at 3.5%, then I would suggest to the honourable member that a 5% increase to the U of A, which is only one of 29 institutions in Alberta, is probably a pretty good deal.
Calgary Mountain View, followed by Edmonton Whitemud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Albertans are angry and fed up with the Mulrooney Conservatives for shoving the goods and services tax down our throats. What seems to have been lost in this government is that Albertans are also angry with them for failing to seriously oppose their federal chums over this tax. Other than write one brief a few months ago, they've done nothing serious to fight it. So my question this afternoon is to the Premier, Mr. Speaker. He had a chance at last the last weekend's Conservative Convention. Did he tell Alberta Tory MPs that he and his MLAs will work to defeat every one of them who votes yes for the GST?
Mr. Speaker, we certainly made sure that all of the representatives of the Conservative Party in the House of Commons know how strongly we and how strongly all Albertans feel about the GST.
We told them. Mr. Speaker, Albertans are serious about fighting this tax. 160,000 of them voted no, and they haven't finished counting all the votes that were cast yesterday. On the other hand, this government's turned down every request that's been made to them by us and by others to fight Ottawa on this tax. They have one last chance to show Albertans whose side they're really on. Mr. Speaker, the Premier has 2 or 3 hours before they start counting the votes in the House of Commons. Is a Premier prepared to do even this little bit? Go into his office, start phoning Alberta Tory MPs, and tell them if they vote yes to the GST tonight, Alberta Conservatives will work for their defeat at the next general election.
Mr. Speaker, the question he just asked is similar to his first question. I've already explained to him that this government, I'm prepared to do it again, this government has led the fight in Canada against the goods and services tax. The honourable members may not like it, but that's a fact of life. We have rallied all of the provinces together against the goods and services tax. We've pressed the federal government on national forums. We've pressed them throughout Alberta. We've caused them to change their plans. We've caused them to cut the size of the tax. And now, Mr. Speaker, they make a decision and they're responsible to the people who elected them.
Edmonton Whitemud, followed by Highwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the report that was released today, the report of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Residential Tenancy, has a number of fine recommendations that I hope will be addressed very, very promptly. However, Mr. Speaker, but the emerging crisis that continues, that's out there today, that's out there right now, is the concern being expressed and the impact being felt by the substantial rental increases faced by tenants. And I'm talking today. Mr. Speaker, the Premier has previously responded within this Assembly that this matter is under review and some action may be forthcoming. Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, can I ask him, when will this government take steps to address the rental crisis in Alberta that we are faced with today?
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs has been dealing with the matter in the House already today. He may want to respond to the honourable member, or perhaps the Minister of Municipal Affairs. That has been dealt with already in the House and considerably over the past period of time.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my question didn't relate specifically to the report, Mr. Speaker. My question related to the rental crisis that's occurring. So I'll direct my question then, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Municipal Affairs responsible for housing. Will the Minister, through you, Mr. Speaker, tell this House once and for all, is he prepared to take steps, such as the renter's rebate, to give the comfort, the relief that tenants deserve today?
Mr. Speaker, I made a commitment to this Assembly and to the honourable member and other honourable members that we would monitor the situation daily with regards to rental increases. We've been doing that. Last week in the House, I pointed out to the honourable member that we reviewed some 40,000 rental units to see what the situation is. And just to update the honourable member again, the rents are settling down 6 to 10%. At the current time, I indicated that there were some pressures the low-income people and social assistance recipients, and that policy we are reviewing and intend to use rent supplement and other means to deal with it. So, yes, Mr. Speaker, we are acting on it, and in a very responsible way.
Highwood, followed by Edmonton Jasper Place.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask a question to the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs on the topic of the day, report of the Committee on the Landlord and Tenant Act. With respect, Mr. Speaker, the question that I would ask is a little different than the preceding questions. There are some tenants in this province that are in a unique situation. There are a number of mobile home parks, particularly in my constituency of Highwood, where the mobile homeowners are in fact tenants in the mobile home park. My question then to the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs is, will the Minister consider the rights of mobile homeowners when he reviews the recommendations contained in this report?
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that would be yes, though the report doesn't specifically address the number of citizens in mobile homes that the member refers to. In fact, the current Landlord and Tenant Act does apply to any person renting a mobile home, and the Mobile Home Tenancies Act does apply to those who would rent the sites themselves. It would be my intention to consider any changes that would be made in this area to apply as well to those who would rent accommodation, and any recommendations I would make to our government in that respect would include both.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, the supplementary question would be again to the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs. Could he give this House some assurance that there will be a timely address of the mobile home owners' tenancy rights in support of their unique situation in tenancy?
Mr. Speaker, I can only repeat that certainly any changes that would apply to other renters in the province should also be considered in terms of the people who rent accommodation in mobile home sites. That would require a change to that Mobile Home Sites Tenancies Act, as well as possible changes to the Landlord and Tenant Act or a substitute act, as the report suggests. but I would be happy to look at both of those and, in fact, to hear from the honourable member or his constituents regarding specific or unique circumstances that might apply particularly to mobile home site owners.
Edmonton Jasper Place, followed by Westlock Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions concern the important subject of mercury contamination of freshwater lakes, rivers, streams, and fish populations. Recently, a very sizable blob of mercury was discovered 300 meters west of the Trans-Canada Highway Bridge in the city of Medicine Hat. I wonder if the Premier would ask his Minister of the Environment if he would interrupt his travels to drop in here and tell us what he's doing about the mercury situation in Medicine Hat.
Premier. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member knows that the Minister of the Environment is not here. He wants to put his question as notice, then we'll certainly draw it to the attention of the Minister of Environment, and he will respond to it when he returns. But I also ask the honourable member to show some credibility by certain manners in this legislature.
Yeah. I thank the Premier for his kindly advice. While he is at it, perhaps he could convene a meeting of the Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife and the Minister of Environment. I've been trying to get an analysis done of some fish samples in the Wapiti River for mercury contamination. I have 2 letters signed by the Minister of the Environment saying that the fish samples are in the freezer and they'll get around to testing when there's time and money, and another one from the Minister of Forestry saying they threw the fish samples in the garbage. Now, I wonder if the government could possibly figure out whether the fish are in the freezer or in the garbage so we can get to the bottom of this.
Who lied to us? I would say this, Mr. Speaker, if in the garbage, on a member would have found them long ago.
Westlock Sturgeon. Westlock Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Agriculture, in the last 2 weeks, 2 very important items have happened with respect to water resources in Western Canada. The first, Mr. Speaker, was with respect to allowing oil companies to take up to one half the potable or usable water out of any water reservoir to enhance oil and gas recovery. The second was Manitoba was the first province to institute the regular testing of aquifers to see if any chemicals are leaked through from the surface, either from industrialization or overuse of farm chemicals. The first question to the Premier, or to the Minister of Agriculture, then, Mr. Speaker, is why were not public hearings held at which farmers and farm organizations could put forward their opinions when you unilaterally decided to give away half the potable water in this province to the oil companies?
Mr. Speaker, I believe the honourable member has misdirected another question. I will see that it reaches the right minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Premier should look elsewhere to his garbage to get some of the answers here. But the second thing then to and I don't know where he's going to go for this one, will the Minister of Agriculture, seeing he's shown such alarming guts and perspicacity in defending the farmers' loss of water, what is he going to do to make sure that farm aquifers in the future are not polluted by chemicals as the Manitoba government is doing?
Mr. Speaker, I will carry that question on for the honourable member as well.
Thank you. Member for Vegreville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We on this side of the House have raised concerns repeatedly about the Department of Agriculture predictions that net farm income in Alberta was going to drop by 54% in the 1990 year. The Minister of Agriculture, in his curious way, stood up and responded to the Leader of the Official Opposition and said, it's not 54%, it's only 48%. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take for that good news to filter out to the country, Mr. Speaker. Net farm income isn't going to drop by slightly more than 50%, it's going to drop by slightly less than 50%.
Great news.
But in response to that sad situation, the federal government is offering $80 to $100 million of assistance
to grain farmers in the province of Alberta, and I'd like the Minister of Agriculture to stand in his place and tell us what specifically he is doing to make sure that farmers in Alberta get that money and get it soon.
Mr. Speaker, maybe I again should clarify for the honourable member and some of his colleagues that Alberta Agriculture makes no prediction on upcoming farm income. The figures that he likes to keep referring to are projections made by Stats Canada, not by any provincial agency. In direct answer to his question, I think I've shared with the House before that we are in discussions with the federal government saying it is time you assisted Alberta agriculture in the prairies in a stronger way. We have taken a number of actions over the last years that are addressing the same problems you're expressing concern of now. And I would recount again for the honourable member's information our Farm Credit Stability Program announced by the Honourable Premier in 1986, which this year is costing the Alberta government $60 to $70 million. But the net benefit of that program to Alberta farmers is $130 million, which that makes that program in its alone a greater contribution to the health of our agricultural industry than the $80 to $90 million that the honourable member is identifying out of the recent federal government's announcement. I can add to that program, Mr. Speaker, the Ag Development Corporation, which also
Tell us about it.
protects our industry against the high interest rates perpetuated on the industry by the federal government, and add another $50 to $60 million.
There must be more.
And we can go on and deal with our farm fuel distribution allowance.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you very much. I knew you wouldn't run out of gas. Vegreville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister might make light of the situation, but it's serious, and I'd like to remind him that it takes money to plant crops, not a bunch of cheap talk. And I'd like to ask him how long he's prepared to have Alberta farmers stand waiting for this promised assistance while he and his federal counterpart argue back and forth about who did what when. Go down to Ottawa and get the money.
Right on. Go get it.
Mr. Speaker, I would repeat again to this House that the Alberta agricultural industry is diversified, it's got a certain resilient strength in it, and I don't detect hundreds of farmers out there saying we can't seed unless we get some immediate money. I do detect farmers out there saying, hey, we want to be treated equally by our federal government to farmers across the prairies. And that's the commitment that I've made to this House, is that we will ensure that our farmers get fair and equitable treatment with other farmers in the prairie. And I close again, Mr. Speaker, at the risk of getting cut off again by saying that we've done a substantive number of programs. I could go on and list a few more, but I hesitate to do it by the looks I'm getting.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the member for Edmonton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are many times in this chamber when, on behalf of the legitimate concerns of our constituents, we passionately feel the need to enter debate. Last evening, I felt this need very strongly, as well as my keen sense of frustration that certain rulings seem to cut off that debate. However, anger and frustration can have more effective means of expression in this chamber than being named by Mr. Speaker, and I will endeavor in the future to be challenged in directing my energies and my feelings on behalf of my constituents in ways that represent honor and integrity in this chamber. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. A request under Standing Order 40 by Edmonton Jasper Place, speaking to urgency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are in Alberta 17 widely recognized ecological zones. There are only 2 of which have really substantial wilderness protection. Both are in the National Park Zone, Wood Buffalo and the Mountain Park region. The third is very close to being well protected. The World Wildlife Fund and the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society have launched a very public campaign called the Endangered Spaces Campaign to draw public attention to the need to preserve and protect what is precious in our great outdoors, what is necessary and essential to the survival of many endangered species in our province. Her Honor, the Honorable Lieutenant Governor has sent a message endorsing the campaign, the Endangered Spaces Campaign. I will quote just briefly from her letter. She says, as Canadians, we still have great opportunities to preserve for future enjoyment our environment and the various species which still exist. Hopefully this major conservation initiative, Endangered Spaces, will encourage each of us to do our part to ensure that future generations are not deprived of their rightful heritage. After all, we do not own the earth, we have only borrowed the space we presently occupy. Those are the words of Her Honor, the Honorable Lieutenant Governor. The urgency is that in each day that passes, some portion of these spaces passes from a place where it can be preserved into the non-preservable category. Unfortunately, the Ecological Reserve Program has become stalled, and there are some signals from the government which have led people to become quite concerned about the campaign in the province of Alberta. For this reason, I think it would be timely and urgent that we take the opportunity of National Wildlife Week for this Assembly to lend its support to the Endangered Spaces campaign. That's the big urgency.
Standing Order 40, Honourable Member. The request under Standing Order 40 for unanimous consent. Those in favour of granting unanimous consent, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Fails. Thank you, without calling out honourable members. The request fails. Perhaps we could have unanimous consent to revert to the introduction of special guests. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and to the members of the Assembly for that permission. In the members' gallery today are 27 young students from Neerlandia Elementary School. Neerlandia is north of Edmonton. It's a Dutch word referring to New Holland. And accompanying the teachers today are the students are their teacher Jim Bosma and a number of parents, Andrew Tuninga, Shirley Waringa, Angela Tuninga, Sandra Olthius, and also Philip Bosma and Irene Baker, who are with them as well. Philip Bosma is 6 years old, Mr. Speaker. I would ask them to rise, and I would ask all of my colleagues in the Assembly to extend them the normal and warm greeting.
Matter of privilege, Chair recognizes the member for Redwater Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this afternoon I rise on a point of privilege regarding the questions and comments the honourable member for Stony Plain raised in this House yesterday. Implicit in his questioning and comments were allegations regarding the integrity of a member of this Assembly and the priority with which I conduct the duties of my office. You will recall, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member discussed certain lands near Smoky Lake, Alberta, which he believed that my company owned and incidentally which is on record with the Legislative Assembly. The lands in question, until recently, were owned by Harvest Gold Developments Limited, a company my wife and I formed in March of 1978. And this was for the purpose of purchasing land. In June of 1985, prior to my becoming an elected representative, Harvest Gold became the registered owner of the lands in question. Although in actuality, the ownership of these lands was a partnership between Harvest Gold Developments Limited and Mr. Orest Tchaikovsky of Smoky Lake. Each of us gave personal guarantees to the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce in Smoky Lake for a mortgage which was registered against the land's title, and to which I wish to table certified copies of this title. In late 1989, I returned legal counsel to prepare the necessary documentation pertaining to the sale of the lands to Mr. Tchaikovsky, which incidentally was completed on March the 2nd, 1990. Mr. Speaker, I categorically state that I, at no time, used my position as a member of this legislative assembly to exert influence or to persuade any town or municipal officials with respect to future development of the subject lands. I was sensitive to potential perception of some individuals that my company's ownership of the lands and my being the member of the Legislative Assembly could be viewed as suspicious. With this concern, I commenced steps to dispose of the lands over 1 year ago. The allegations of exercising improper influence, which were implicit in the honorable member's questions yesterday, are without foundation and have undermined my ability to carry out the duties of my office. These allegations have jeopardized my position as an MLA to deal with town councils and constituents in my constituency. The honorable member is unable to substantiate his allegations, Mr. Speaker, simply because there is no basis in fact for having made these allegations. Therefore, on a point of privilege, Mr. Speaker, I request that you rule that a breach of my privilege has taken place. Thank you.
Order, please. Order. Order, please. Member for Stony Plain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you refer to the record enhancer, my statements are quite clear there. I stated the member for Redwater, Andrew, has been actively lobbying the town council of Smoky Lake to approve the location of a chicken processing plant on a commercial site in which the member has a financial interest. In view of the fact that he has disassociated his interest from it just a month ago, I would be prepared to delete the has a financial interest. However, two members of the Smoky Lake Council have, in consultation and communication with my staff, reaffirmed that there was active communication to, in fact, have some influence with respect to the said plant. These two councillors were so sure of their ground that they permitted their names and phone numbers to be released to the press. To the press and the public, I might add. I went on to say, or to question the Premier with respect to the conduct, if that was acceptable to him. The Premier then made the statement that this was a serious allegation. All of the statements that were made in the preamble have appeared at some place or other, again through the local press, at bits in the March 4th in the Journal, and subsequently in yesterday's papers. So there appears to be a large degree of substance to the statements that have been made. With respect to the business of a conflict of interest, I can categorically state that I did not accuse a member of a conflict of interest. I said there was the appearance, and I stress again, the appearance of a conflict of interest. That is a far cry from accusing a member of being involved in it. I also went on to request the Premier.
Order. Honourable member, I will allow you to continue in a moment. Please take your place. The matter of privilege is sufficiently grave that there should be silence in this chamber, except for the member speaking. Stony Plain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also went on to request the Premier to investigate the matter and report his findings to Albertans and this legislature.
That kind of investigation, if it had in fact, or if it would take place, would do more to clear the air than anything else. So I find this very, very hard to accept that I have in any way breached the said member's privilege. All the statements that were made in this House, with the exception of one bit of information that we didn't have our hands on, the fact that he had divested himself of his financial interest in the property as late as March 2nd, 1990, have been substantiated and supported by the members of council who are the ones who are alleging the persuasion or lobbying. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair has listened attentively. The chair will review the blues and hopefully report back to the House tomorrow. Orders of the day.
Written questions.
Mr.